You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a podcast supported by listeners like you. To contribute, visit patreon.com/I Have Some Notes.
Okay, what do you think of this? A Star Wars story by Zack Snyder.
No thanks. We have enough problems with the Star Wars IP. Getting that guy involved isn't going to help.
Whatever, we're just going to do it anyway.
Go for it. In fact, I have some notes that might be useful.
Save it. Zach won't listen to him anyway.
Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, the movie podcast with cuts, keeps, punch-ups, and tweaks on mediocre movies. I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Gregg Beaver.
And today we are discussing Rebel Moon, Part 1, A Child of Fire. So far,
no punctuation for Indiana Jones, so you got all your punctuation for Rebel Moon.
Yeah. It's all here. It's my favorite part of this movie.
This is one of our closest to the movie dropping records we've ever done.
I would suspect it's probably the most because we.
No, we did do The Mummy right after we recorded, right after we watched it. I think that's the.
Oh, nice.
But okay. I don't know that we watched it opening night.
Oh, sorry. No, we didn't. We didn't do that. No.
So this one's record from release to record, but not from watch to record. All right.
No. Nice. This because at time of recording, Rebel Moon came out about 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 25 hours ago, almost to the dot.
Yep.
And what a 25 hour it's been. I've been counting my life pre and post Rebel Moon, Part 1, A Child of Fire.
Hey, before we get into this clearly bad movie, can I talk about a good movie I watched recently?
Sure.
Which is a little film called Spirit of the Season. And we saw it with Liam at the Metro Theater in Edmonton. And Liam was a co-writer, and it was fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, and thanks for coming out.
Yeah, it was funny. It was it had heart and everything, and anybody who starts a movie and finishes a movie, that is like its own type of miracle, right? So congratulations on that.
Nice. Zach and I have that in common.
Yeah, that's right.
No, it was a real joy seeing the movie that my friends and I wrote. The debutantes, specifically friends of the pod, Robin Slack and Lane Anderson, as well as the very talented Glenna Showalter, also friend of the pod. Dave, basically the only writer who hasn't been on the podcast is Dave.
We can remedy that anytime we like.
Perhaps. He's on a video game podcast all the time. He doesn't need extra attention.
No more credits. No more credits for Dave.
But it was just a joy seeing it up on screen and having an audience react to it, like giving the laughs, giving the gasps. It's so satisfying to,
Yeah, the audience was really receptive to it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I'm sorry I couldn't make it out.
That's right. It will be on demand eventually.
Yeah.
As usual, I'm the one who couldn't make it to the thing. Just the way my life's been the last little while. But I'm glad that it was good, and I do look forward to seeing it in time.
Indeed. Yeah, follow Spirit of the Season on any of our socials for updates on when that'll have a wider release. Speaking of wide release, this Netflix movie that we watched.
The widest release.
Yeah. Everyone's homes at 8:00. I started it right at 8 because we were just ready for movie night, and you guys joined shortly after. So even though we weren't able to gather in person because that was the plan, we were going to watch this all together. Just couldn't make it happen. But we did watch it kind of in live chat with each other, and that was a lot of fun.
Liam was only about 20 minutes ahead of us, I think.
Then I like to stop the movie and go pee and get snacks and smoke and stuff.
We all wrapped it up
by the last act. It was all even. Yeah.
I feel like in terms of plot, you were right there with us. from about the 20-minute mark, we were in lockstep with each other in terms of what was actually happening in the movie.
My slow-mo scene would end as yours began. It was
correct.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so of course, this movie was directed by the infamous Zack Snyder, written by Zack Snyder and Kurt Johnstad, of 300 and Atomic Blonde fame, and Shay Hatton. And then, of course, inspired by the works of Star Wars, Dune, Warhammer, Harry Potter, Avatar,
Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons. She was dressed like Ripley for a good chunk of the movie. Like
a dude flies a griffin, like an actual griffin. And some of the aliens are just orcs, right? Like they're orcs from space. Yeah.
You had commented one of them looked like the orcs from Farscape. I had never seen Farscape, but I have seen Doctor Who, and the Spider Lady looks like a Doctor Who villain.
Oh, no, sorry, there was a blue lady in the cantina who looked like a character from Farscape.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I was commenting that the orcs looked like the orcs from Bright.
Yeah, kind of.
They probably had that makeup. Those like
Netflix production
sitting around and
And this cast list, it's just so jam packed. I'm gonna make Scott say all these names I'll mispronounce. So
you're up, Scott.
All right, it's
taking out.
Sophia Boutella as Cora, Jimon Hansu as Titus, Ed Skrein as Atticus Noble, Michael Heisman as Gunner, Bae Duna as Nemesis, Ray Fisher as Bloodaxe, got Charlie Hunnam as Kai, Anthony Hopkins as Jimmy. It is a stacked cast.
Mm-hmm.
It is an embarrassment of riches.
I feel like we should let this movie speak for itself before we get into it, because I'm just bursting to really get into what was going on with this, because what a spectacle. It was not a memorable movie, but it was a memorable movie watching experience. So let's get the audience up to speed so they can join us.
When I found you in the wreckage of that ship, I considered leaving you. I was afraid you could bring trouble to us.
What do you think they want?
Everything.
We're just farmers. We're not a threat. They won't just kill us, will they?
You're delusional. You think those soldiers will show them mercy? Stop. We're gonna have to fight.
Assassination. The galaxy is thrust into chaos when the king of the Motherworld and his daughter, the Princess Issa, are publicly killed in a coup by the treacherous Senator Belisarius. Declaring himself regent, he dispatches his military to reassert the Motherworld's dominance across the galaxy. Meanwhile, on the remote planet of Velt, former Imperium soldier Cora enjoys a peaceful farming life when Admiral Noble's dreadnought appears in the sky. He demands the village provide his army with grain to fuel their conquests, but the village leader refuses, explaining they have no reserves. Another ambitious farmer, Gunner, refutes Sindri's claim, leading to Noble murdering the town leader. Knowing the Motherworld's ambitions well and the suffering they intend to inflict, Cora decides to leave. But in true Zack Snyder fashion, she spots a group of soldiers planning sexual violence against a young village girl and decides to murder everyone instead. Cora promises the villagers she will assemble a band of super warriors to defend their way of life, including recruiting the great General Titus. So, she does that. One of her recruits betrays her to Noble, and the team is captured. They are saved by Gunner, and Noble has a Disney villain death. The team then returns to Velt to begin preparations to defend their home.
Yeah. So the bulk of that plot summary is the first 20 minutes of the movie. Mm-hmm. The last two paragraphs are the
2 hours of movie.
The 2 hours of movie.
Yeah.
And no joke, like what I wrote in the last two paragraphs is pretty much all that happens for the last 80 minutes.
Kinda, yeah.
Not only is it staggering that a significant chunk of this movie is her just going from random cool looking D&D party hero, asking them to join her cause, and then them doing that after showcasing their skills, fighting some arbitrary thing or doing some arbitrary trial or task. It's very silly how it's just one after the other with no conflict, but that is probably going to be well discussed as from both us and anyone else who reviews this movie. What I found baffling was that they left a bunch of characters behind.
Yeah.
They already had the beginnings of a cool party and they just left them behind. The little girl with the water who was getting assaulted does have like a whole moment where she like talks about what's important to her and is like, like you kind of get a moment invested with her and you get a moment invested with this like talking robot with free will and a flower crown. And then those two characters are just left on the planet.
There's a third character too, because one of the soldiers, the newest soldier, a private, is idealistic, and he stands up to the rest of the squad when they're going to assault the girl, and he's the only one who survives. He's just also never seen or heard from again.
There's a great, fascist turncoat kid, a real, whatever the guy, the Star Wars guy, the stormtrooper who, takes his mask off.
Finn?
Finn, there you go. Took me a minute. We got a Finn type, we got a talking robot, we got a precious little girl. Beginning of a perfectly good adventuring party. And they are just abandoned to go get the coolest dudes.
And here's the kicker on that. When they get back to Velt at the end of the movie, in the final shot, you see the robot like rise up out of the grass with a spear and like antlers. And it's like, what was he up to while we were gone? I want to see that movie. He was having a riot.
Off screen, this guy was having his own cool movie, like a real Lion King 1.5 situation. Like,
yeah, there's like a whole movie missing here.
Yeah, well, I assume, maybe it's too much to assume that we'll get to understand what those antlers were all about in part 2. Maybe? Who knows? I don't know if I have that much confidence in Zack Snyder and his team.
Yeah. What did we enjoy about this? Because our letterbox ratings actually had a nice breadth between the three of us. So anything in particular that we wanted to highlight?
Just to start off, it is a pretty movie to look at. Like Zack Snyder, say what you will about him as storyteller, the dude can make a cool image. And there are cool images all over this movie. The production design is pretty good, all things considered, especially considering the somewhat limited budget they were working with. The world building in that first 20 minutes is pretty solid, I thought. The characters all look very impressive, even if they're not very deep or interesting. It's a very good looking movie.
Yeah, there's a moment where the robot he gets his face plunged down into the dirt and has to go wash himself off, and the scene of him washing his face is as far as the animation goes, excellent. Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling that it's kind of a combination of practical. It might be just like a guy in a suit washing his face, and they're using all the water from that. But that's the smartest way to do it because it looked completely convincing. It was a very good shot.
I found the first scene when the space fascists, the not Empire, rolls up onto the planet, and Atticus Noble is big dogging all of them as only an intimidating Nazi allegory can. And I'm like, oh, this actually has some genuine tension. Maybe this movie isn't going to be nonsense. This is genuinely a tense and well played out scene. I liked that first 20 minutes.
We all liked that first 20 minutes.
100%. Yeah. I was thinking, in the back of my mind, I was like, somehow this is going to go wrong. But it's set up the stakes very well. We got, as Scott pointed out many times, like some really great world building, and the introduction to the villain was genuinely terrifying, and his method for getting what he wants from people was brutal in a very almost R-rated fashion, which makes me understand why there's probably an R-rated cut sitting around somewhere, because I'm sure that his beating of people down with a big bone cane would be much more violent in an R-rated setting. But yeah, like I was completely on board. I mean, it's not like it was perfect. Like some of the exposition was clunky and this and that, but generally for sci-fi, I'm willing to forgive a lot, and I was completely on board, and I was ready to see what was next. And then we got to the rest of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know that I necessarily agree with Scott that it's a gorgeous looking movie or a pretty one, because I saw someone describe it as desktop wallpaper. Is kind of what it looks like. It's got a weird artificial sheen to it that all of his stuff does, but it's really obvious here. And it was an interesting looking movie, and the production design was definitely good, but I don't know that it had that like, whoa, like epic, what am I looking at vibe that some of his other stuff does. Like kind of fake.
Definitely. I'm thinking of the scenes with Cora, Sofia Boutella in front of, planting. And then there's like this backdrop of like, kind of a Saturn-ish type planet in the background. And like that, I assume that that's the planet that their moon is orbiting, but like it really looked like, it kind of looked more like a matte painting than a well put together, CG shot. Yeah. So
you can see the Earth and you can see the green screen.
A little bit. I think it's something that we talked about in the indie one, where it just maybe had too many digital brushes applied to it. It just didn't, kind of dipped into the uncanny valley.
Unlike Indiana Jones, though, that's the aesthetic that I kind of am just primed to expect from a Zack Snyder movie. So maybe I'm being a little more lenient with it here, because it's not outside of my expectation for how a Zack Snyder movie should look. And so I'm willing to just kind of like buy it. But,
valid, for sure. I don't think it, regardless of his aesthetic, I don't think it looks as good as some of his other movies.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. Like, it was kind of like a weird mix of his like earlier like 300 stuff and like his later much more gritty, grounded Man of Steel stuff. I don't know that I felt like the whole movie came together with one true visual tone. If that makes any sense.
It is tonally all over the place. It's also paced really weird. So like, yeah. Speaking just purely on the visuals, I just feel like there was something that was kind of inconsistent throughout the movie, and it's hard to exactly put my finger on it, but like, and there was, and like, I do say that that there are a lot of gorgeous shots in the movie, but like there are also places where it's just confused nonsense. Like during the climax, all three of us commented that we had no idea where anyone was or what was happening because it was just chaos on the screen.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to put you on blast for like in the visuals, because that's one of those parts of this movie where if someone was like, I really liked how it looked, I could be like, I can see that. But when I've saw, people praising the movie in reviews and be like, I really liked the plot and the characters in the end, it's like, what are you talking about? What movie did you see? So liking how it looks is a totally valid take. Everything else I question. Some of you are the royal you, not you, Scott, like people's takeaway.
Look,
what was it they're looking for a movie,
Admittedly, of the three of us, I rated this movie the kindest on Letterboxd.
Generous, I think, is a good way to put it.
But as I said to Anita, like, I didn't hate this movie. Hate is way too strong a word for any opinion on this film. But I certainly didn't love it. There were parts of it that I liked, and it was fine as far as I'm concerned. Like, it was fine. It was very forgettable. It wasn't particularly deep. It wasn't super interesting. Like, it was just fine.
I think overall, I just felt let down because the opening scene or opening act was so well put together. Like, it was slow and deliberate and like it had a good pace to it. And I really thought it was gonna build to something fun. Silly me for trusting anything. So I don't know if I can describe it as being fine, because I felt so bored by the last bit of it, or the last most of it, I guess is the best way to put it. It really, I was really struggling to hold my attention, because each subsequent new hero character that they were introducing, they were doing it in such a way that was like not really all that fun, not interesting,
not organic is how I describe.
Very inorganic.
It is 4 or 5 long ass scenes of them going to meet the coolest dude ever, and then going to meet a different version of the coolest dude ever.
The coolest dude on that planet.
None of them have, except for Titus, none of them really offer any resistance to joining this band of people who are going to go up against, I mean, like, I don't know, it feels like a suicide mission essentially, and like they just kind of like hop along, especially Bae Doona's character, who just like, they don't even mention, it seems like, hey, do you want to join this band of warriors? The scene with her ends, and then the next scene is Sofia Boutella talking to someone, and the only reason you know that her character had joined the party is that she's walking around in the background of the ship.
There's a lot of connective tissue missing in this movie, and that's the one thing that makes me actually angry about this film, is that they specifically released a movie that was chopped up to hell so that they could engineer a Snyder cut down the way. And that's like a AAA game studio rushing out a game and then just being like, we'll fix it with DLC and we'll make it play, and it'll be playable in a year. And I actively hate that. Like, that is such a terrible way to release a movie. And I believe in our group chat, I said it felt like a ripoff.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that that's probably allegedly that they've done that. I mean, I know there's a lot of noise out there that's the case, and it kind of, I mean, I think there's direct quotes from Zack Snyder that at least imply that that's the case, but I just want to say allegedly, because I don't know that for sure.
If that is the case, though, especially because this wasn't like DC like looming over Zack Snyder and doing whatever they wanted with his movie after he was done with it, he had total control here. He could have released a 5-hour movie. Netflix was not going to stop him. He could have absolutely released a 4-hour R-rated film, and it would have been fine. He had the editorial control here, and he just chose to release a sloppy edit so that he could release a director's cut down the road. If that is the case, actually kind of angry about that.
Fair. I would suspect it weirdly is Netflix. I would blame marketers, not necessarily Zack Snyder, or Zack Snyder willing to participate with marketers. I don't know that he would be that craven, whereas like, I could see them being like, part of the hook of this guy is you get this second Snyder cut vibe out of him. He comes with 2 movies.
I think even because that is the quote from him where he's talking about there's a 4-hour R-rated cut of it, and I think that in and of itself puts me in a bad mood, because it does immediately suggest that there's like a cut that already exists that more closely aligns to his vision.
He's released the movie. He's released the movie in early access. And in a year, it will be watchable. And that is a terrible way to run a movie business.
No, and then and I think it was Tack on Twitter that said that he's not interested in investing another 4 hours in a Zack Snyder cut. And I don't feel like anybody should. I feel like as a collective movie going group, we should all say no to this kind of like cynical way of cutting movies. Like
I don't want to see a 2-hour trailer for your 4-hour movie.
Yeah. Also, like if you release a bad version of your movie, that's the bad version that I'm going to criticize. I'm waiting for the update.
What makes this even more egregious is that this is also one of those movies they split into 2 parts. So it's like, is the other half of the movie the part 2, or is the other half of the movie all the stuff you cut?
Yeah.
Are there four parts to this movie? The first cut, the second cut, part 1, and the first cut and the second cut, part 2.
And here's the thing, I think it's the latter.
Good Lord. Yeah, that's,
I think it was like, they're doing a Lord of the Rings extended cut kind of thing, right?
Yeah. But they're engineering it.
Good.
Yeah, and with Lord of the Rings, like they cut it down to make it theatrically viable.
Yeah.
They just had all this additional material, and it was so good and so popular that they were like, all right, we'll do an extended cut. With the Snyder cut, it was because he had his artistic vision ripped away from him, and it was an opportunity for him to rectify that. So I can at least respect that. But this just seems, if this is true, it's so cynical.
This has the same hubris as the Dark Universe of them being like, we're going to launch a cinematic universe and it's going to be great. This is them being like, we're going to launch a Snyder Cut thing and a extended cut multi-part like Lord of the Rings thing.
And the dummies out there will just eat it up.
Yeah, they're trying to force that the way they tried to force the Dark Universe. And it's like, no, the thing has to be at least good first to then start trying to pull that taffy. Like,
yeah. It's bonkers to me that you wouldn't release the
Snyder Cut,
the best version of the film that you thought you had.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's strange. And
how funny would it be if they did release the Snyder Cut and everyone's like, can we get the studio cut, please?
Yeah. But like this movie does feel like there's I don't know if I want to say missing scenes, but it does feel like something got left on the cutting room floor. And I have to assume that it's all the characterization of all the heroes that they pick up, because there's almost nothing to it. I don't even think they talk to each other.
No, they pick the heroes up, and then they basically don't really do anything except stand around for most of the rest of the movie, and then shoot a couple guns during the climax.
No.
The only interpersonal conflict is early on the old guy telling her not to run away from Planet Velt. That is the only interpersonal friction between any characters that aren't clearly that isn't physical. It's the only friction that isn't explored or resolved with physical violence.
There's a little bit of early tension with Charlie Hunnam's character, but that's quickly like passed by, and that's just to plant the seeds for the later development.
For sure.
That's pretty much it, though.
Yeah, Gunner's character has like an interesting setup, because his kind of hubris leads directly to the, what do they call him? The father of the village, to that guy, to their leader's death, right? And he is kind of like a sniveling coward throughout, and then he does find his courage at the end of the movie, but like,
he saves that girl during the spider fight too.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, he does start to show the beginnings of courage.
He's kind of the only one with an arc.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like he does have an arc, but it's still like not developed enough, I felt, to feel satisfying.
Oh. Well, and Sophia Boutella's the protagonist, and she has no arc.
Yeah.
She starts and ends the movie as the same character. She had her arc before the start of the movie.
Yeah. I guess she has like a teeny tiny one when she wants to leave and get away from the Mother Earth military, and then she decides not to. But like that happens in the span of about 3 minutes or 4 minutes of the movie, so it's not really an arc much as
not
just
per
like
se.
one.
That's
of
a call. You're confusing it with a call to adventure.
Yeah, there you go.
She refuses the call, and then she answers the call, and then
that's right. That's the only thing I can extrapolate is like that. Yeah. That is her arc / call to adventure. Yeah.
Well, I also think there's a lot we can fix about this, and we definitely have thoughts, so let's go to our fixes.
What's up, nerds? This is Josh from Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and so much more. Every week we break down the latest blockbuster movies, TV shows, revisit comic events. We even talk to comic creators like Kyle Higgins, Melissa Flores, and Matt Groom. And don't miss out on our Superhero Showdown episodes where we debate your suggestions on who would win in a fight, or maybe they might become friends. So join in on the conversation with me, Josh, and my co-host Alex every Wednesday on your podcatcher of choice. Look for our yellow and red icon, and we'll see you soon, Smackheads.
Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. We're going to fix Rebel Moon.
Hopefully.
I think we can. I've got a pretty big swing, so I want to hear from you guys first, because my pitch can go over top of whatever you guys pitch.
Sure. Well, I have a largely structural fix that I think I could open with.
Sure.
Because this movie doesn't feel complete to me in the sense that it doesn't feel like a complete story to me. It feels like there is a beginning, there is a climax, but the narrative feels unfinished. It really does feel like part one of a two-part story. And to me, a good movie, even in parts, should still have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It should feel like its entire self-contained thing that is part of an overarching thing. And I feel like there's a way to fix that. And that is at the beginning of the movie when Korra's like, look, we need to get some dudes to Seven Samurai this village for us. I know a guy. There's this exiled general. If we could get our hands on him, like he could potentially swing the odds in our favor. And that's kind of the main guy that they're pointed at. Like, it's like, okay, we need to get a hold of the rebels because they know where this guy is. Along the way, we pick up a couple other guys who are like super cool fighters because they could help us out too. And then we get to the general, and then there's still so much movie left. And the stuff with picking up the general is the most truncated part of the movie. Like they set up that like we're going to go, we learn that he's fighting in a gladiatorial pit. Like he's this shamed general in exile who rose up previously against the mother planet. And they meet him drunk in a gutter. He takes a bath and he's on board. Like that.
He doesn't even take a whole bath.
He doesn't even.
And Robot gives him half a bath.
And talk about like we're going to the fireworks factory. We learn he's a gladiatorial fighter, and we go to the gladiatorial planet, and we don't see any fighting.
Yeah.
So
it's wild to me that we get like a 20-minute Griffin scene, but we don't get to see him in the gladiatorial arena.
My feeling here is that that's the arc of this movie is we need to go get Obi-Wan. Let's go get Obi-Wan. And so the whole movie builds up to them getting to the gladiatorial planet, meeting up with the general, him being reticent to join up with them because he's already led a band to disaster and he doesn't want to do it again. And that's where Kai springs his trap, because now he's got the general and everybody else in the same place. So that's where they get betrayed. That's where Noble confronts them. And then we get a sweet action set piece at the gladiatorial arena that bookends the movie. And that's the big climax. That's the third act set piece. And then from there, that's the end of the movie. We've got him on board. We had the kick-ass fight. We Disney villain death Noble so that he can come back in the next movie. And that to me feels like it would have been a much more satisfying arc for the narrative of this film. So I think if you just cut off the weird smuggler planet bit at the end, have the whole like action, the climax happen at the gladiator pits right there, the movie's tighter and it has a better narrative trajectory.
Yeah, I feel like I can build on that, Scott, because I do think that would be a much tighter film, and I do agree with you entirely that it should end with them meeting the general that they're after.
If I may, I thought the final act set piece was going to be something at the gladiator arena. The way things
so did I.
Yeah.
Sorry. And I was thinking that like rather than have them go from like one place to the next collecting superheroes in increasingly boring ways, that maybe instead you can have Charlie Hunnam's character Kai, like he has kind of like a smuggling team.
He has like his crew.
Yeah, and he has like a crew, and they all have like, we get to, as we adventure, you know, trying to find our way to the general, we get to know this sort of like rogues gallery of characters who all have their different reasons for why they're kind of in the crime scene and why they hate the Imperium and Mother the mother planet itself.
The mother world, yeah.
Yeah, the mother world. And that leads to the betrayal by Charlie Hunnam, where he betrays not only the group, but Titus himself. And that suddenly is a step too far, because that's not what they signed up for. They hate the mother world, and that's when they kind of complete their journey in becoming part of the team.
Yeah, and that actually solves the problem of some character development too, because over the course of their journey to meet the rebels and then find the general, Korra can have moments where she gets to interact with these people. They get to develop as characters. We get to learn about them more, and that then they earned that, like, we're not with that guy anymore when Kai double crosses everybody to the Imperium.
Yeah. And he doesn't, I mean, part of his whole thing is he's like, oh, I'm going to get all these different disparate people with bounties on their head. But like he says it himself, getting Korra and Titus is plenty.
So it's the mother load for him. Yeah.
So he can be like, hey, my smuggler crew, I sold out Korra and Titus. And they're like, no, we're not down with that. Fuck you.
Yeah. We're going to be rich forever. And they're like, you've gone to, well, not just them, but also the rebel leader, because they'll have picked up the rebel leader at that point.
Right. I have one more thought that might fix Korra a bit. And I don't know if this weaves in perfectly or not, but what if instead of her plan is to gather together heroes to fight the Imperium, which actually kind of seems like weird, because like it seems so hopeless, because they seem to be like such a big force. Like what if her plan is actually to like gather the essentials that she needs to help them escape to like a far off reaches of the galaxy. Like she's actually trying to, like, I mean, maybe that's why they approached the smuggler in the first place. So that like she has like this arc where she comes towards the end, she comes to a place where she decides that they need to fight back rather than run.
I kind of like that, because that builds off of her initial character reaction at the beginning, which is to escape, except it grows to, okay, well, now we all need to escape, but we're going to need ships. We're going to need help. I know this general guy who might be able to help organize such a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could still work. And that does, like, her learning to want to fight again could kind of be her arc. Yeah.
Yeah.
And being like, maybe we have a chance to actually stand up to these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could give Diamond Hansu like an opportunity to have like some kind of inspiring speech as this great general that sort of like brings everyone together at some point.
It would be great if that character did literally anything.
Yeah,
any one thing.
Damn.
Yeah, I like your ending too better, Scott, than the brief little. One of my like lesser pitches was to change the ending, because I didn't like that it was on this weird smuggler outpost. And my theory is they only did that so that they could have it be rainy and dark and have them on that little floating buoy thing, which again, that was that whole final fight. Was very hard to tell geographically. And I leaned over to Amanda. I'm like, are they fighting on a hot air balloon? Like, why? What are they? It's just a platform floating in space. Like, Smash Brothers. Like, it's just.
Yeah.
And I think they just did that so that his betrayal happens somewhere rainy and gnarly to have a final boss fight. I like what you said better, Scott. I think it should be at the Coliseum. The backup pitch, if for some reason that's not viable, was have it on Velt, because their whole thing is like, I'm gathering these heroes to get this dreadnought to leave Velt alone. And my pitch to sort of make this feel like a contained story was for her to more or less succeed in doing that by gathering these people, telling the dreadnought to fuck off. It does, with a real like fist shaking, we'll be back. And she inadvertently, what was meant to be just this one and done, get off my planet, she inadvertently sparks a
full-on rebellion. I think that's the thrust of honestly, I think that's the thrust of the narrative here. Yeah. Is that what starts as a little seven samurai in a village turns into rebellion against the Galactic Empire.
Yeah.
But the movie doesn't go far enough in that direction.
But it also doesn't feel like it's going to happen organically either, because they're straight up telling you that like we're going to gather like 7 people and then defeat a giant army, and that just doesn't seem realistic to me. Yeah, so the way that we're pitching this sort of like a slower build-up makes way more sense to me.
There was such a baffling line at the end when he's like, "This looks like they fight on the outpost. They win the day. They go back to Velt. The dreadnought has left off screen." And then this guy's like, "Wow, it's a beautiful planet. I would have really liked to have died in battle here. Too bad the battle didn't happen." Like, a character literally says, "Too bad the battle didn't happen here." And I was like, yeah, I agree. Too bad the battle didn't happen here.
When is Calculon getting to the fireworks factory?
So yeah, but I think Gladiator is stronger than Velt, but definitely both better than Hot Air Balloon buoy in the middle of nowhere.
And I'm okay with them not having the Seven Samurai fight in this movie. I'm okay with that. But so long as this movie still has a satisfying endpoint, and them stating at the beginning, we're going to go get General Titus, and it ending with them recruiting General Titus, to me, there's your first movie. Like, that works.
Yeah,
and then we've got the general. Yep. We're going to go back to Velt. Movie 2, we're going to go kick some ass in Velt. Like, that's where we're going next.
Yep.
I'm down with
that. So my big fix here, the thing I had, like we've said, this didn't have a lot of connective tissue. A lot of stuff doesn't happen organically. It's a lot of just like on to the next thing, on to the next thing. There's no friction. There's no interpersonal connection. And that's a drag. That should just be in the movie. And I feel like that's the stuff they cut out to sell us the Snyder Cut, which is also a drag. But even what we get, I found the dialogue abhorrent in this movie. The plot could use some massaging, but technically makes sense in a start to finish kind of way. The dialogue specifically, the words used to communicate that plot, suck so hard. There are so many cringy, obvious, underwritten lines that I can't believe. Like, it doesn't even reek of like a first draft. It reeks of a child wrote it. Like, it's just, it's really, really clunky, obvious dialogue with a lot of telling and not showing. Which is weird because Zack Snyder loves to show us things. He's all about showing. So if I was actually giving notes on this movie, I would take a copy of the script and a red pen, and I would rewrite a bunch of the dialogue to not be cliched and subtextless and bland and boring and broad and stupid. That would be what I would do.
In chat, I think at one point I had said that Sofia Boutella was just reading her character sheet.
Yeah. I'm telling you this so you know who I am.
This is my history, and this is what I'm all about.
So I would love to just redo the dialogue. Me, you guys, anyone with a high school education could rewrite this movie. But doesn't make for good podcasting. I don't have a copy of the script in front of me. So my pitch, this dialogue is so bad, cut it all entirely. I think this movie, the plot is simple enough, and Zack Snyder prides himself on communicating big visual ideas that you could probably get away with this having no dialogue.
So you're proposing like the Mad Max Fury Road silent black and white version of this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen it, but that sounds cool. Does it work? Does Mad Max black and white work without dialogue? Yeah. I mean, Fury Road's a perfect movie as it is, but it is so dynamic, and the action is so big and so obvious that you don't need and the characters don't even say much in the movie as it is, that you don't really need what little they say to have the movie just completely convey its meaning to you. Sick.
Which is actually a testament to George Miller's direction in that movie. In this case, it's because you're saying the dialogue is so bad, you might as well just throw it out anyway.
Yeah, and I think whether it's the movie as it is now with the dialogue taken out, or your guys' better plot fixes that you've pitched, I think you could do it without dialogue, and it forces showing, not telling, because there's a lot of telling in this movie and not a lot of showing. It would force the people making it, not just Zach, but everyone involved, to have to show. And I think it would make this otherwise bare bones and derivative plot work because we're filling in those blanks with our own imagination. Short of being allowed to just cross stuff out and write it better, cut all the dialogue is my fix.
Derivative. I don't know where you got that from. Could this movie be possibly derivative from?
I'm glad you guys said it as well, because that scene with the guy in the griffin is like, I'm like, oh, we're doing Avatar now. Like baffling.
Apparently they front loaded this movie with a deal to make a role playing setting based on it. I learned about this from a friend online this morning, and apparently that deal fell through, and there's a lawsuit in the works about it.
Oh no!
Which is interesting because I was like, yeah, this does read as someone's homebrew D&D campaign, like their homebrew space D&D campaign.
I'm glad you brought that up. Holy heck! Because a lot of people I've seen criticism being like, this is a real video game kind of plot. This to me felt like a session 0 and a session 1 of a role-playing game. We're going to have these little moments where each little hero gets their moment to shine.
Yep.
And then we're going to have an inciting incident with the big bad in session 1 that will kick off the whole thing. This played like a session 0 and session 1 of an RPG, for sure.
Kinda, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
100%. And that also explains why there is a griffin and there are space orcs. Like,
yeah. And now we go to the ranch with the griffin. Scott, what is your character doing? Are you wrangling a griffin while in servitude?
Yeah. I'm going to roll my animal handling.
Scott, and Greg, when we meet your character, you're in the middle of a fight with a big spider. Can you tell us how that goes? Any other things you'd like to see in this flick?
More of that brain slug. That was the coolest alien in the entire movie.
Yes, agreed. That was that bit was fun. You said slug, and it reminded me of slime, because I love a slime tube. If you listen to Quantum Kickflip, you'll know my affinity for slime tubes. One of the other things I would change, regardless of what else happens in this movie, the scene at the end where we see Admiral Noble regenerate in a tube, get some face time with the big bad, and then go back out there to kick some ass. That should not have been at the end of this movie. It should have been at the beginning of the next one.
Oh, for sure.
It's exactly the kind of scene that kicks off a sequel. Like, the bad guy dies at the end of the first one, and then at the beginning of the second one, you see him crawling out of his grave or whatever contrived reason they bring Shredder back, right? Like, yeah. And so
he even has a Disney villain death. He falls from a great height into smoke. Like,
yeah. Bring him back in part 2. Though maybe not, because I did kind of like the scene of him regenerating, because I love slime tubes and that kind of weird shit. And if we put it in part 2, I wouldn't see it. So maybe keep it in part 1 so that I can watch it.
Was it you, Scott, that said it looked very Demolition Man?
Presumably, you would see the part 2 of our version of the movie, though. So
that's right. Well, are you guys going to watch part 2 when it comes out?
I mean, probably, in spite of myself. I will probably not day 1 like we did for this one, but
no.
Yeah, I'll probably get around to seeing it.
I guess the bigger question is, are we coming back on the podcast to do it?
Oh, I thought the bigger question is, are you going to watch part 2? Scott says yes. I say probably no. Greg?
I would rather not.
If we do it for the podcast. But then also, are you going to watch the inevitable director's cut?
Hell no.
No, I'm not either.
I'm torn. I don't want to out of like principle, but I am curious because I liked the movie just enough that I want to see what the allegedly better version of it might have been. But
fair,
I don't know.
Fair.
But I also don't want to reward that behavior. So I'm very torn.
Yeah.
I'm very torn.
And of course, you, our listeners, had lots of thoughts. Thank you to everyone who contributed. Not a lot of folks got to see this movie before we recorded our episode about it, because like we said, movie's less than 2 days old at this point. So we asked you about your favorite Zack Snyder movies. But before we get to that, or just your general comments on Zack Snyder as a director, we did get one from Tack, who was able to share his thoughts on this one specifically.
Actually, sorry, before Tack had told us that he was going to give us his guesses as to what the fixes were going to be.
This is the shot in the dark. This is the shot in the dark. sorry, just because I said shot in the dark, one thing I did kind of like, the laser guns in this seem to make like lava when they shoot, and that was kind of cool. Instead of the
Plasma.
like perfectly singed Star Wars holes, it's kind of got this sloppy plasma lava, kind of cool. Tack says, as threatened, here are my uneducated blind fixes in case I don't get a chance to watch Rebel Scum. I mean Moon. 1, play half of the slow-mo shots at normal speed.
That's a fair criticism of any Zack Snyder movie. That was low-hanging fruit.
2, the main henchman should have a change of heart and switch sides before the end.
I don't know that really works. Noble is he's got such a punchable face.
Well, I mean, a character does that in the first 5 minutes, and then we never see them again.
Oh, that's true.
That's fair. Yeah. So it's kind of called shot.
Yeah. The mentor figure should have lived, even if they just pop up from the ground in a post-credit scene.
There's no real mentor figure here. I suppose the general is supposed
character?
No, he's just the village leader. If anything, it's the guy who took her in.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But he lives. He does not die in this film.
So there you go. Good fix, Tack. But I guess not a good fix because they did that one. They saw that one coming and they were ahead of you. For that one really controversial scene everyone is talking about, maybe leave that as implied. Yeah.
Would that be the sexual assault?
Yeah. You nailed that one, Tack.
Yeah.
Would you believe that there's needless sexual assault in this Zack Snyder movie? 5, the other slightly less controversial scene, make it longer.
Would that be the weird sex scene with Admiral Noble on his ship where the tentacle monster is making love to him?
There you go. Yeah. Make it longer and creepier.
Also, so it's obvious that they're doing a Star Wars thing because they've got a British white guy as a villain, and that's, Nazis are always British white dudes, and that's fine. But also he is like kind of effeminate, and then he's also like fucking a tentacle at one point, and I'm a little over queer coded villains. So like he did a queer coded villain, and that's, we're over that.
I don't know that he came off as effeminate to me, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Not really.
Okay, that's fair. Maybe that's how I read it. I just saw him as very
I'm not discounting your read on it. That's just how I felt about it.
Yeah. I didn't until he was lackadaisically bathing with a tentacle monster. And then I kind of was like, is this, if not a queer coded thing, a weird sex thing. The villain has weird sexual the villain has weird sexual proclivities, which is also how you make a queer coded villain. So they were
totally fair. Yeah.
Step. Yeah. 6, put an I Want song a third of the way through the running time, and that's the only lyrical song.
I mean, if one of the characters is a bard, we're already doing a D&D party, then that makes perfect sense to me. It would be the guy who rode the griffin, right? Like, that's the guy who'd sing the song.
7, he says Mark Hamill should have played the villain.
I don't think Mark Hamill has a punchable enough face, honestly.
Yeah.
Also, surprise Carrie Elwes is the king, right?
Have you seen the House of Fall of Usher?
Not yet.
Or the Fall of House Usher. He's a villain in that movie, and yes, sure. he's a villain in that, and he's fantastic. So I think he can kind of do anything. He's a much more talented actor than maybe most give him credit for. Not that you're trying to underplay his talent, Scott. That's just,
I just don't think he looks punchable enough like Admiral Noble did.
That's fair.
And I want to be clear. I'm not trying to dunk on Ed Skrein. I think he's a very handsome man. But in this movie, the way he carries himself, the way he delivers his lines, like it's very calculated to make Noble very detestable, and he nails it.
Also, with apologies, the cut of his face is like screams Nazi to me.
Yeah, he's got that strong space Aryan chin.
Yeah.
I actually like Tack's last suggestion here because it sort of ties into what would have been one of my fixes if you guys didn't like my silent pitch. He says, number 8, Harrison Ford should narrate the whole movie. I was braced for you guys to be like, no, that somebody needs to talk. You can't have a movie with no talking. If you absolutely needed it, I was going to pitch having Gunner, like old man Gunner, narrate significant chunks of the movie.
I mean, they already have Robo Anthony Hopkins narrating the introduction. And you could have had him. You could have had him doing the whole movie.
Yeah. So
as this, and with the framing device being him still alive as a robot centuries later, recounting this time that he helped the Galactic Civil War, like that. Yeah. I'd 100% buy that as a framing device.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really too bad we never see that robot again. Cause apparently like of all the derivative stuff in this movie, the thing they stole from Dune is, a giant narrated info dump in the first 5 minutes and then never do that again. That's not the thing you take away from the Lynch Dune. Yeah. And then, of course, our comments on just Zack Snyder as a director. Thank you to everyone who commented. Zolgar says, Zack Snyder is an amazing director for certain purposes. I believe he is at his best when he is working with original properties, and if he's working with existing IP, he should really only work on those that inherently support his style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think? What would be a movie that supports Zack Snyder's style? Like an IP he could take on?
Like an IP that he hasn't done before.
That he hasn't done that he would actually thrive at. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Bear with me. Mm-hmm. I have a really dumb suggestion. Give him the ability to do a live action Hulk Hogan's Rock and Roll Wrestling, which is an 80s cartoon, which was about Hulk Hogan and his friends who were wrestlers doing fun, having fun adventures together. I think the level of macho involved in that could work. That's stupid. Never mind. Cut that off.
Yeah, I don't know. I got nothing. When Scott said that, I was like, give him Captain Planet, because he won't. Everything he does, like any kind of social commentary he tries to communicate, he does terribly, and I would just love him to see him somehow screw up a climate change allegory real bad.
Yeah.
Here's something. You mentioned Captain Planet, and that's kind of like an 80s cartoon, and I think that he has the sensibilities of like an 80s cartoon. Like, he likes the idea of like taking action figures and smashing them together. Give him G.I. Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think Zack Snyder could actually do a half-decent G.I. Joe.
Yeah, or like, he should do Street Sharks. When they make a Street Sharks movie, he should do Street Sharks. Or sure, Biker Mice from Mars. He could. Yeah,
for sure. Those guys are macho. They've got bikes. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, all you want from Street Sharks is just muscly sharks wailing on each other. That's exactly what he's there for. He's a commercial director. They should be giving him toys. Like,
kind of, yeah. And that's with all due respect to Zack Snyder. Like, I think that's a milieu he would actually probably do pretty well in.
Yeah.
Give him He-Man.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a Zack Snyder He-Man? Oh my God.
Exactly. That's because it doesn't have to be deep. He doesn't make deep movies. So give him the broadest, dumbest. Yeah, it's He-Man. There we go.
I would 100% watch Zack Snyder's He-Man for sure.
Yeah. Robin from Cinematological says, Snyder is an extraordinary visualist who has a limited palette for who human beings are and what they can aspire to. Randian ideology permeates his work in a way it permeates high schoolers' perspectives. So when he tries for heroic sacrifice, it comes off insincere.
Yeah.
That is 100% true, and also a vicious takedown.
Just saying, He-Man, you guys. He-Man.
Robin Slack, a friend of the show, podcast guest of note, and screenwriter of and director of Spirit of the Season, says Zack Snyder was created in a lab by a team of scientists who set out to create the perfect director for Frank Miller's 300, and they did their job too well. And to be clear, that doesn't necessarily mean 300 is objectively good. It just means that if your goal is to adapt 300 for the screen, Zack Snyder is objectively the best person for that very specific single job. And as a result, he is often the worst person for any other job.
Except, Robin, hear me out. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. You've got Skeletor there. You've got He-Man, you've got Man-at-Arms. They're all very muscly. You've got like the saturated tones. You've got Castle Grayskull in the background. Battle Cat. He's riding Battle Cat. Can you picture it in your mind right now?
The ridiculous, like, we were talking about the scene at the beginning of this movie where she's pushing a plow in front of a green screen Saturn. That actually would work for whatever He-Man world is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Eternia.
Yeah,
Eternia,
it seems like Eternia is kind of like an open book in terms of like what's going on there, and it's a very wide place that has all sorts of different types of what am I thinking of, environments,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Could have a lot of fun with Orko. Like, I'm 100% on board with this, you guys.
Josh Scar of Talking Smack had a great comment, but I want to take this opportunity to let you know you should check out Josh's podcast, Talking Smack, Superhero Movies, Animation, Comics, specifically a recent episode about superhero fatigue, where me and Scott were guests.
We talk about stuff.
Scott and I were guests. Grammar.
Yes, not Mean Scott.
Yeah, Mean Scott was on a different podcast, and I'm never going back to that one. Josh says, Snyder is an amazing visualist. He'd have won an Academy Award for cinematography if he dedicated himself to that role. But he aspired to become an edgelord director, and that had some really good hits, Dawn of the Dead, 300, but was given too much freedom with his DC project and has now become a menace to the nerd community. The fact that he's already teasing a Snyder cut out of Rebel Moon is just him playing to his cult-like fan base. Yeah. Pretty crass to try to do the prime us for a director's cut and prime us for a part 2 movie nonsense. It's gross.
Yeah. I in an age of personal branding, I think it's real bad for directors because it can lead to them attempting to appease the very narrow fan base that they generate, that like their most fervent fan base, and try to appeal to them, because those are the people who are probably speaking to him most through social media. So that's what he thinks, by and large, people want from him, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's maybe not the greatest creative environment to be in.
Aaron comments, Guy likes to put dead babies and sexual assault in most of his movies to imply sad or bad, and I would kind of like to throw the chair at him.
Yeah.
A chair. I don't know. The chair was my addition. Sorry. A chair at him. Any chair will do. Cody says, how do I feel about him as a director? I feel like whoosh kapow sums him up.
He's very good at whoosh kapow, and that's all you need to be good at. Mm-hmm. To do He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Or a silent Star Wars knockoff.
There you go.
Yeah. Or a silent He-Man knockoff.
Corndare says, a lot of his recent interviews make him seem like a fine dude and he's got a neat visual flair, but I really struggle to vibe with his movies.
You know what? As much as we've kind of dunked on his movies, both now and in the past, I will submit that from all of the interview material I've seen of him, Zack Snyder does legitimately seem like just a cool dude who likes movies.
Yeah.
And that's to his credit.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Like, his movies are clearly not for me. And I don't think they have much depth. They are very pretty, but like, all the power to him. Zack Snyder seems like a nice guy, and I would probably sit and have a beer with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Patrick Willems Our Himbo Auteur video is a great look at Snyder as a guy and his oeuvre. So yeah, he's a silly goose, but he's not a problem.
Yeah.
No.
His fans are maybe a little bit of a problem.
So some of he's got a certain fan base that.
Yeah. I mean, on the toxicity level, they're not Gamergate toxic, you know what I mean? They're just, maybe a little bit of a nuisance.
And Richie commented, although it's getting some not so good reviews, I really hope that it turns out to be a lot of fun and a hit with people. The world needs some more big budget original sci-fi epic films, and having another one be a massive flop is not going to do us any favors getting more made. That's valid.
I agree with Richie on this point. I'm happy that Zack Snyder took a big swing on this. I will say that.
For sure.
and tried to like cobble together some ideas from different things and put his own stamp on a big sci-fi epic. I do have respect for that. Whether or not we like the finished product, whether or not we're happy with the contrived Snyder Cut nonsense, I'm legit pleased that someone's trying to make something new in science fiction. I'm always happy for that. And I don't know that this one's gonna hurt the chances of other big sci-fi movies being made, because Dune is also coming out. Yeah. And Dune Part 1 was a huge hit, and Dune Part 2 is like wildly anticipated. And if it knocks it out of the park too, we're going to be seeing sci-fi epics for the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm not too worried about sci-fi as a movie genre right now. And I don't think that one Zack Snyder dud is going to necessarily hurt that. So.
Kill the concept of science fiction. Yeah, that's fair. Greg, how would this one stack up against The Creator? Or Scott, if you've seen The Creator as well.
I'll be honest, I haven't seen it yet, but I know Greg has.
That's why I'm asking. Yeah, I was asking Greg, but I didn't want to leave you out just in case.
I mean, The Creator is a far better film. I don't think they're really close. I quite like The Creator. It has its flaws, but usually with science fiction, I'm able to forgive more than other genres. So maybe that's part of it. But I had a really good time with it, and I thought it had a pretty decent emotional core. And talk about visually amazing. Like it's probably one of the best looking movies of the year, and has some of the most convincing CGI I have seen in anything ever.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to check that one out. But we had to watch this first. But that concludes our episode on Rebel Moon, Hang on, I gotta go back up to Rebel Moon, Part 1 - A Child of Fire.
That's what I was thinking, because like when I started doing the show notes, I honestly couldn't remember what the fuck the subtitle was. And then when I read it, I was like, that is so lame.
I actually feel a little silly. Because I saw that it was called A Child of Fire, like during the beginning thing, and we spend so much time with that little girl young woman who eventually gets almost assaulted, and she's got this bucket of water that she like gives to the space Nazis, and then later she's sitting by a river with the robot talking about the myth and whatever, and I'm like, oh, is Cora the Child of Fire, and this girl is going to be like the water daughter or something? Cause she's everything she had done, we had seen with that. And she was at a well every time. Everything with that character was water based. And when I assumed she was going to be one of the people joining the adventuring party, I was like, oh, she's going to be water.
She's our water bender.
Yeah. And then that character gets left behind. So I was very wrong on that, but yeah, just seemed funny that there was a character who was strongly water-based in the Child of Fire movie.
Well, I mean, there is a part 2, and they're going back to that planet, so who knows?
Fair enough. And we'll be back. Speaking of going back, we will be back with a new episode in the new year. Happy New Year to all of you. See you on the other side. Hope you're having a great holiday season, and I hope, as you've got some downtime, some time to yourself, or perhaps just looking at your phone, well, avoiding conversation with your family, you could follow us on social media at I Have Some Notes on X, at I Have Some Notes Pod on Instagram, facebook.com/I Have Some Notes, or best of all, find us on the Discord server. Anywhere that we have links to things, we will have a link to the Discord server. Come get in on the conversation. It's a lot of fun. Or at the very least, subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast app of choice.
There's one other place you can subscribe, and that is on patreon.com/I Have Some Notes, because we are entirely crowdfunded at this point, and it definitely helps us keep the lights on and keep us rolling in pod when you throw us a couple bucks. So if you have a couple bucks to throw, pitch in this holiday season.
Yeah, and as Liam mentioned, we're going to be back in the new year. Our first episode will be covering our favorite movies of 2023, which is an episode that I look forward to every year, not only because we actually get to talk about good movies, which is great, but it's also a great opportunity to hear what my two colleagues are watching, and gives me some great ideas for what I can watch throughout 2024. So, yeah, tune into that.
Yeah. Until then, I'm Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Great Beaver. Keep watching the skies for the Rebel Moon!